we are back to the old setup. This setup is really not fun to put together. So if you guys can't tell, we're going to be discussing filament dryer boxes, and this is kind of a scene that hasn't seen much development recently when we've been going from the Ender 3s up to the Bamboo Labs. Filament dryer boxes have kind of just stayed in the past. But today we're going to be discussing some of the best and most advanced, maybe most expensive dryer boxes on the market today. So we're going to be discussing these boxes in price order from least to most expensive. And the first one that we're starting with is the Hex dryer box. So I backed this thing on Kickstarter, honestly, probably about a year ago. They had a fantastic landing page and their first Kickstarter actually failed. They came back with a second edition and here we are today. For the retail price of $60 US, I can't say anything good about this dryer box. I thought this was a premium option and well, I was a little upset at myself for keeping it in the box up until this video, but after unboxing it today, don't think I lost very much. So to get it out of the way first, the only thing that I can even begin to consider good about this box is that it has one singular touch capacitive button on the front of the box. This one button was basically what their entire Kickstarter platform was kind of hinting at. This box is easy to use, and sure, it seems easy to use. You take a filament, you load it in, and you click the button and it's good to go. But the terrible thing about this particular box is that it only has one button. There's no screens, there's no indicators of any kind. When you light this thing up, yeah, it has some LEDs that kind of indicate a few things, but the instruction manual is so bad, those LEDs don't make any sense. This box really is just not worth it. They advertise high quality, and when I open it, and the hinge just wants to flop around everywhere. It's cheap, flimsy plastic on both the lid and the insides. There's nothing about this that makes me want to recommend this to anyone.
Shepard, take note.
Honestly, the worst part about it is I don't know anything about the box, the indicators. There's just nothing helpful. I don't know how long the box has been on. I don't know what the temperature of the box is. I don't know if the filament is dry. It's all just a really bad package. And one of the absolute worst things about this box is that there's a 5010 fan on the inside of it. This thing is horrifically loud. When you power it on, it whizzes up, and if you're in the same room trying to work, you can't. Okay, so now that that is out of the way, I have three fantastic options lined up for you guys. Next one's gonna be the Sunlu S2. This box is a box that I have been using religiously for the last year. I was also a Kickstarter backer of this. I think I paid $250 for 5 of them, which comes out to about $50 each. So the Sunlu S2 comes in at $80 US, but you can reasonably find it between $75 and $50 US on websites like AliExpress or some of those other marketplaces. Just realize that you're probably gonna have to pay for shipping, so that price is probably gonna be a little bit higher. So the thing about this particular box that just puts me over the moon is how easy to navigate this display is. The display is big, it's clear, it's obvious what's happening. When you power the machine on, there's only 4 buttons. You have a settings button, an up arrow, a down arrow, and then an on-off button. So the Sunlu S2 doesn't allow you to make any truly custom profiles with custom profile names. However, you do have a profile available for PLA, PETG, ABS, PC, or any of the other major filament types. And the good thing about that is that you can actually change the settings for that particular profile. But I absolutely cannot stress enough how fantastically amazing and easy it is to navigate this box. All of the common settings are available and very easy to figure out. You've got a set value, you can change it between Fahrenheit and Celsius. You can set the time to dry, and you can even change the box to have a light on or a light off. For me, actually, the biggest, most important thing is that when I want to go and set a timed dry, I can actually go over to the time limit and I can click the down arrow about 6 times because it goes in 1 hour increments and it defaults to 6 hours. And then it loops back all the way around to the back, which is 99 hours. So I can basically put some filament in here because I know I'm gonna use it today or tomorrow or the next day, and it can just dry for days on end. And then when I'm ready to use it, pull it out and it's ready to go. And lastly, possibly even the most important thing about this particular box is that it has 360-degree heating. There's heating elements inside the lid, and there's also heating elements that are inside on the bottom of the filament roll. This 360-degree heating actually means that there's no reason to have a fan on the inside of this dryer box. And when you look at the volume of this box as compared to the other ones, this box is totally and completely silent. I could have 15 of these running in a room at once and you would never know. Alright, so the FixDry. This is a box that most of you guys have probably never heard of and actually might be one that you guys want to purchase after this video.
What is that? What is that?
So usually these no-name Chinese companies come out and offer you a product and you might buy it or you might not, but regardless, you're probably going to be disappointed. Well, I had low expectations when this arrived in the studio and I can't say enough good stuff about it. I am absolutely blown out of the water by this machine. So we haven't yet discussed the EIBOS, and I think you guys know where that's going to be headed, but what I do want to say is the build quality on this FixDry machine is not quite as good as the EIBOS, but the build quality over here is superb. It is really, really good. And not only is the build quality superb, the user interface, it's operated by 4 buttons, and these 4 buttons can't be easier to understand. Just like the Sunlu S2, this machine has 4 buttons. You have a power button, a settings button, an up arrow, and a down arrow. And, well, those settings operate exactly the same as the Sunlu S2, except instead of a touch panel and the touch screen, you have it as physical buttons. A lot of times when you get a cheap Chinese product, the physical buttons don't really feel good to push, but in this particular case, the buttons actually feel really nice to push.
Just push this button.
The only downside about pushing one of these buttons is it operates a piezo buzzer that is terribly annoying, and I might end up going into the machine and just cutting the wires because I absolutely hate that buzzer. Although that buzzer is probably the least of my concern because I'm probably only pushing it maybe once or twice a week. So while we're talking about the user interface, we need to talk about how basic it is because there are definitely no special features going on here. When you plug this thing into the wall, it has a factory default temperature and time for the drying period. When you go to put a roll of filament in and dry it, you can of course change the drying temperature and the drying times. However, you can't actually set that value forever. If the box ever becomes unplugged from the wall, it's going to be reset back to those factory values. Now, what if you print with PLA and PETG or other plastics that need to dry with different dry temperatures and different drying times? Unfortunately, there's no good news here because it's going to be quite tedious to constantly be changing the settings on this box. However, the best recommendation I have is that you just buy multiple boxes and you stick a little sticker on that says PLA, ABS, or whatever. This way all of your settings are always within one machine. And now's a good time to talk about the retail price of the FixDry because I recommended buying possibly 2 or even 3 of these machines. And well, the retail price is $130 US. That is kind of a tough pill to swallow when you need to see maybe buying 2 or 3 of them is between $260 and $390. It's a little bit hard to justify. Now, there are still a few other things about this machine that I definitely want to mention because they are worth noting. So, of the dryers on the list, this machine is absolutely the best one to print from while drying because there are 3 holes on top on each side and 2 holes in the back and 2 holes on the front. That makes this the best possible print from dryer boxes that I've ever seen. The next thing that I kind of love and kind of hate about this machine is the power delivery. This machine has an integrated power supply, so they give you a very beautiful, nice, tiny plug. And what's nice about this is if you purchase multiple dryer boxes of various kinds, or even hopefully maybe of the same kind, well, you can just plug multiple of these into the same power strip given you have appropriate power available, and these aren't going to be getting in the way. When you take a power brick, a massive power brick, and have to plug it into a power strip, and you just block the other plugs, it's really annoying. Sadly though, the thing that sucks about this is that it's the only dryer that I've ever tested that has an integrated plug, and you can't actually remove the plug from the box. Another thing that's kind of great about this machine is that it has safety kind of as a #1 priority. So FixDry claims that this box can get up to 70 degrees Celsius, and if you're printing at that temperature and the box happens to fall over onto its side, there is a tilt sensor which is going to shut the box off completely. Given the ultra wide footprint of this machine and it being loaded with 2 to 5 pounds of plastic, I highly doubt this machine is ever going to topple over while it's drying. However, it is good to see safety, and I'm not going to complain about added safety features. So I've basically had nothing bad to say about the FixDry. Depending on your use case, this might not be a nail in the coffin for you, but this machine is the loudest machine that is on this table. It's astronomically loud, and for me, there's no way this could ever, not even a single one of them, be next to me while I'm trying to work. I clocked this thing at roughly 65, 66 dB, and that is just way too loud because it's a constant hum. It's not like it sometimes goes down or sometimes goes up. It's a constant 65 dB hum. This is going to be one of those rare cases where the volume actually kinda, to me, doesn't really matter because this machine is small enough and it can be placed in an inconspicuous location where I am not, and it won't bother me.
You're bothering me.
That being said, this definitely cannot be in the room that I'm working in because it's even louder than the Hex, and I cannot work with even a single one of these machines in the same room as me. It is fantastic in every single way possible. This machine outbeats everything on the table tenfold. Alright, so this is Jerry from the future here, and I had to come back and talk about this because GratKit, well, they were a little late, but this definitely deserves to be covered because even though this single filament dryer box comes in at $100, it is on sale for $20 off, so it comes in at about $80. But even though it's a single spool dryer for $100, I think it actually holds value, and this is a combination between the S2 and then the EIBOS Polyhemus. So it actually comes with a very necessary lengthy manual if you intend to use the screen, and if you don't intend to use the screen, you still need the lengthy manual because this thing can connect to Wi-Fi, and that's actually what makes this box so nice. So admittedly, the screen on here, in my opinion, is kind of useless. It's a little laggy and it's very difficult to operate. There's only 5 buttons, but there are many features, from changing the filament type to changing the LEDs, changing everything that you have. All the settings you have on all of these other boxes is done on here, except it's just not really done very well. And that's why you need to use the phone app. And on the phone app, what you can do is, well, everything that you can do on the screen, except just with one tap of a button. You can change the LED color from one tap of a button, you can change the filament type from one tap of a button, the time that the filament dries for. You can set anywhere from 0 to 24 hours of dry time, or you can do an infinite dry time. You've got all the common filament types such as ABS, nylon, carbon fiber, PTG, PLA, PLA+. You have everything, but on top of what the S2 does not have, you also have 2 DIY profiles. This way you can do whatever you want if you have some special filament types. So unfortunately, my integration with the GratKit was a little rushed because the video is already in the editing stage right now, so I don't really have much ability to do testing on this and really get a feel for how it works in my workflow. But what I will say is, while it is definitely a little inconvenient to have to use an application to change stuff like all those settings, once the application is open, using it to navigate and change the settings on this box is far and away more convenient than even the EIBOS Polyhemus, right? You've got the same settings and abilities on here on both of these. You know, the EIBOS doesn't have LEDs, but other than that, the settings and the capabilities are the exact same. But even though It's very easy to navigate the screen on this box. It's even easier with this one if you use the app, and it is Wi-Fi controlled, so of course you have to have Wi-Fi for that. But honestly, I think being able to integrate with Wi-Fi on your phone makes this a very worthy competitor. I don't know if it would be the #1 choice for me because it's only one roll and I have tons of filament, but for those of you that only have anywhere between 1 and maybe 5 or 6 rolls of filament, I actually think this is a seriously worthy option and something you should look into.
Release the Kraken!
So enter the most expensive competitor, which is the EIBOS Polyhemus. And this machine is arguably the best, most advanced dryer on the market. This thing is absolutely wicked, insane in every single way possible. So I was originally greeted to an experience where this entire lid assembly had to be built, and I was not happy, and it left me with a bad taste in my mouth right off the bat. But once it was completed and I got the rolls in here, that was completely and entirely just forgotten because the overall experience of ownership with this machine is just incredible. Besides the fact that the lid has to be built, it is super tough, super rigid, very high quality. The base of this machine is heavy, rigid, high quality as well. There is an integrated power supply just like the FixDry, except this time it has a plug that can be plugged in and out, so when it's not in use, you can remove the plug and you can stow it away and it fits a lot better. So the Polyhemus also kind of has 360-degree heating as well, just like the S2, except it's done a little bit differently. There's only one heater at the bottom of the Polyhemus, and there's a stepper motor that goes on the inside of the machine, and as that stepper motor spins, it actually spins and winds the filament roll. You can kind of think of this action similar to the Bamboo Lab AMS, except it's a little bit more dumbed down, not as advanced, but it allows the roll to actually spin and dry as it's spinning. I'm not entirely sure if this is actually going to make the roll dry faster or better or anything else, but just the sheer fact that it's included is phenomenal. It definitely can't hurt, right? The only bad thing about this 360-degree mode is that if you use the holes on the back or on the side of your filament spool, you're no longer going to be able to use those holes because in my experience, this filament spool would just not spin freely very well. I had to go and download one of these filament holder clips, and once I started using this clip, it worked perfectly.
It worked! It worked! It worked!
So one thing that I didn't mention about the FixDry is that there's only one singular heating element. However, there's a custom insert, which is a heat diffuser, which allows the heat to be spread throughout the entire chamber. And that's fantastic to have in this machine, but that's also something that we see in the Polyhemus. One thing that I like about the Polyhemus is that not only do you get these standard 7 plastic profiles, they also give you 3 other profiles that you can use and set to whatever you want. Maybe you're printing with some really weird polymer that's not normal. Maybe you're printing with a glass filled or a carbon filled, or maybe you're even printing with a recycled plastic that has different specs from its counterpart. So I don't know what you're printing with or what you might be printing with, but having 3 additional fully customizable profiles on this machine is amazing. Anyway, the Polyhemus, it's just a conglomeration essentially of the S2 and the FixDry combined into one beautiful, magnificent machine. One thing I didn't talk about was the screen, and it's not a touch screen like the S2, it's more of a button operated screen like the FixDry, but instead of having 4 buttons, it has 6. Those 2 additional buttons make the operation of the machine just a little bit easier, and one of those is for the 360-degree spool rotation. It just turns it on and off, and one of those buttons is going to allow you to actually swap between your filament profiles. The filament profiles can't be renamed by you, but the names that EIBOS have chosen is perfectly normal and makes plenty of sense. Everything on the screen is beautiful and vibrant. There's no colors, but it doesn't need colors. I was telling you that the buttons on the FixDry feel good when you push them and there's a nice haptic feedback there, but the buttons on the EIBOS Polyhemus are just a little better. When you push them, it just really feels like a nice user experience. I mean, it sounds stupid to say, but it feels like a nice button to push. And the last thing that I want to talk about in relation to the EIBOS Polyhemus is its operational volume. So this machine is just a little bit louder than the Sunlu S2. The Sunlu S2 doesn't have any fans on the inside of it, and the Polyhemus does, but the fans that they've chosen are very, very quiet. The fans on the inside of the Polyhemus are so quiet that if you turned it on and I walked into the room and I didn't know that the machine was on, I wouldn't hear it on. And actually, if I knew it was on, there's a good chance that I still wouldn't be able to audibly hear it. So this kind of brings me to a point where I need to give you my overall opinions on which I like the most. And, well, I kind of like all three of these for their own separate reasons. If you have the money, I would never, ever, ever tell someone to not purchase this machine. This machine is phenomenal in every way possible. In terms of a single spool dry, it costs about $75 per spool because retail price is $150 and it can fit 2 spools. If I could get my hands on more of these boxes at a reasonable price, I'm definitely going to be doing that because it's going to make my studio a more functional, better looking studio, and I just really enjoy using this machine. For someone that doesn't quite have the funds to purchase a Polyhemus, I think either of these 2 boxes are going to be a no-brainer. It just depends on what your goals are. If you're going to be drying multiple different kinds of filament and don't want to hassle and you only want to purchase 1 or maybe 2 boxes, then I recommend the S2. For me, in my workflow, the S2 boxes are absolutely fantastic. I've already got 5 of them and there's a possibility that I'll buy more. In my particular workflow, I don't think the FixDry fits. However, the one that I have here is definitely going to make very good use, just away from my desk. Please, please, just do not buy this piece of shit. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I have loved working with every single one of these boxes, except the Hex, which is over there on the floor. If you are interested in any of the 3 boxes on this table, I have a link in the description. I will not be giving you a link to the Hex because that box, well, it's just terrible.